No one understands why farmers' land went unsold until now. How much bad fortune could one family take? It wasn't just a few buildings and clumps of dirt that was about to slip away. It was over 100 years of history, countless miles and endless stores. But now, it was all over. Everything they loved was about to slip away into the hands of a stranger. David loved the 80 acres with every fiber of his farmer's heart. It might have been an old-fashioned practice, but passing on an entire family business and land inheritance from generation to generation was at the core of their family's philosophy. It was his own dream to, one day, give it to his son. But suddenly, bad luck hit. It was miles of beautiful corn and grazing pastures. He wanted nothing more than to spend the rest of his life there. But when the family hit financial hardship, they thought that selling it to a far-off relative would solve their problems. It turns out they trusted the wrong person. They weren't the only ones who were having problems. It was like the lands were cursed. Some farmers found rickety solutions, while others sold and moved away. David watched as his father's land was repossessed and fell into the hands of greed. An auction sign popped up along the barbed wire fence. That was it. They were doomed. Auctions were where vultures swooped in to pick the carcasses of poor families. It was the chance for big business or land developers to buy cheap and dream of strip malls or condos. More than anything, he wanted to buy back the land. But where would he get the money in time? His family reached out to whoever would listen. David didn't care. He was ready to abandon dignity and beg for spare change if needed. It didn't just break his heart. It shattered his old man's dream. But the passage of time didn't care and the auction date rolled around. It was a dismal sum, barely enough to carry a glimmer of hope. But they had to try. Maybe they would get lucky. But as they pulled up the long, familiar driveway, David felt his heart drop into his stomach and twist until he felt sick. There were over 100 farmers there, all waiting for bidding to start. It took every ounce of strength to keep himself from crying. He had to be strong for the old man and his young boy. The walk to the stage felt like miles. And it only got worse when he saw one man in a big cowboy and expensive boots. This guy was loaded and looking determined. A thin man in a worn suit walked onto the stage and explained the details of the sale. He slammed the gavel and announced the opening bid. David felt a panic attack coming. Their emergency fundraising was barely enough to cover it and possibly one bid more. David raised his hand, opening the money war. It was as he feared. The rich cowboy shifted and took a step closer. This guy had diamonds on more than one finger and one in a tooth. David felt like he would crumble into the ground, the very ground he was born on. Maybe the guy would hire them to work on the land. Then, something unexpected happened. He braced for another bid, but none came. The rich guy crossed his arms and stood as still as the rest of the crowd. The auctioneer cleared his throat and tried again, coaxing the price to go higher. No one said a word. David's confusion grew. Again and again, the thin man tried, but no one bid. It was as quiet and still as the early mornings when they started chores. As David looked around, he finally understood what was going on. The large gathering of farmers was looking at his family with sympathy and support. They were going to let him win. With hard glares and solidarity, the crowd finally got their message across. The auctioneer let out a surprised huff and let David's bid go through. They had won their land back. But what was going on? He barely knew a fraction of the people that were there. It turns out the rich cowboy had the answer. There's a code among farmers. We all came here to help. Good luck and good farming, he said, with a warm smile and firm handshake. As the crowd left, many giving nods and tips of the hat, David felt utterly humbled. He had never expected anything like this in his entire life. But he was sure of one thing. It was a kindness and new reality he wasn't going to waste. He would work extra hard to make sure their land stayed in their family. Also, if anyone else ran into hardships, he would drive for miles to make sure everyone else kept their hands down as they did for him.